How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Elbows Up podcast. In episode 17, we're going to be going over our Stanley Cup playoff predictions and our preview. There's going to be a lot to say during this episode. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the whole first round and we're going to pick the winner and in how many games. And then at the end of the episode, we're going to go through our conference final predictions as well as the games and then rounding out the Stanley Cup final and how many games that will be. There hasn't been any playoff games just yet. There's definitely going to be some upsets and stuff like that, how there always are in playoffs. But before we get to any of that, I'm here with my co-host Keenan Kilback. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. I'm hyped for the playoffs. This is probably the best time of the year to be a hockey fan. Right? This is right up there with the World Juniors, right?
Yeah,
Which is when we started this. So I'm excited to get into this preview. I've been waiting to do this episode for a while.
yeah, for sure. I'm super excited too. I feel like majority of our picks might be similar, but I think that really like anything can happen. There's a couple series that I have in mind that I think could definitely go either way, and I'm excited to see if you think the same or if there's other series where I think it's pretty easy choice that you think it's going to be a close series. There's not a lot of NHL news this past week, so we're just kind of going to get right into our predictions, and we're going to start off with arguably the best team ever. Statistically, by
Regular
regular
season.
season, they are the best team ever. We got the Boston Bruins versus the Florida Panthers. Um, I'm just gonna hand this one over to you. How do you feel about the Panthers, and do they got any chance to even win a game? You think?
I definitely think so. I mean, the Panthers are a lot better than a wildcard team. I think we all know that. I think they just had a really rough year, but they turned it on at the end of the season and they pretty much eliminated the Penguins because of it. I mean, the Penguins lost it themselves too. They have nobody to blame but themselves, but the Panthers really took advantage of their chance, and I think they won like 6 or 7 games in a row near the end of the year there, which locked them into that one of the wild card spots. And I mean, when you look at their roster, they're stacked. Like, I mean, Matthew Tkachuk's become one of the best wingers in the league
Yeah,
this year. Like, he's probably been the best winger in the league this year. Him and Pastrnak.
yeah, for sure.
And I mean, Verhage with 40 goals this year. He's been an analytical darling for years, and now he's really shown up in the stat sheet for him too. And I mean, their defense, like Brandon Montour breaking out with like 70 points. They got Ekblad. Forsling had a good year. I mean, I think the only question is in net, right?
Yeah,
Alex Lyon was really good at the end here for them, but Bobrovsky has not played up to the $10 million he's making. So I think that'll be the difference for them. But I really don't think they're going to stand a chance against Boston, who, like you said, is just they don't have any weaknesses, right? Like
Mhm.
they're the best team in the league in every category, like home ice, on the road, like power play, penalty kill, everything is just at the top of the league this year. And I know that playoffs are different, and we've seen that with the 2018-19 Lightning when they got swept to the
Yeah.
Jackets, who were like the last place team to make it, obviously. So you never know what can happen in the playoffs, but for this series, I got the Bruins in 6.
Bruins in 6. Wow.
Yeah,
You
I
think
got the
Florida's gonna win 2 games?
I got them in a couple. Like I said, I think they're better than you know a wild card team. Like they should have been higher, and obviously the Atlantic Division is really good. But yeah, I got them winning a couple games. I think they match up well against Boston.
That's surprising. That's probably the definitely the first shocker of the episode for me at least. Um, yeah, everything that you said about the Bruins, I definitely agree with. I think on the Panther side, obviously Kachuk's having an MVP type season. He's not gonna get the heart or anything with McDavid, but yeah, he's having a really good season. But I think if the Panthers had Spencer Knight, I think this is more of a conversation. But just with like their goaltending, I don't think they really have a chance. Yeah, like I think the Bruins are just too strong. Their depth at all their positions is just going to be their biggest asset, not just in the series, but going on further in the playoffs. And honestly, I can see Swayman getting a couple of games. I think Swayman could play like game 3 or even game 2 for them and just rest Allmark because I don't think they're gonna I don't know they could rest him for what he's gonna do further in the playoffs, right? Swayman's a really
Yeah,
good
that's true.
goalie. I wouldn't want to give him any more than one game a series, but I feel like that's definitely possible.
Yeah,
But yeah, go ahead.
okay, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I definitely expect Boston to win this series, but I don't think it's going to be like a sweep. If Boston were to say win the first three games, then I could see them throwing Swayman in there. But I just think in the playoffs, you just got to ride your one guy.
Oh, for
And
sure. Yeah.
so, unless it's like a 3-0 series lead,
Yeah.
that's the only way I
Yeah.
would play him.
Yeah. Definitely.
But you never know. I mean, who knows what coaches could do? But I don't know. I just how many games did you have him in?
I just yeah, the last thing just what you were saying, like yeah, I agree with the Swayman only going in if they're up 3-0, and that's kind of like I don't know. I wouldn't say that they're gonna put him in game three actually. They're not gonna go back and forth, but yeah, if they're up 3-0, they probably could. But I got Bruins sweeping actually.
Really?
I don't think the Panthers really have a chance, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, you're right though. Like Boston is the best regular season team of all time, and they only got better too, right? Like with Orlov and
Yeah,
Hathaway and
Bertuzzi's been really good.
Bertuzzi as well. They're stacked. They're definitely
Yeah,
the best team on paper and everything. I think Taylor Hall's back just in time too for the playoffs.
yeah.
So, like I said, they have no weaknesses. I mean, we'll see. You can never predict the playoffs, right? like,
Well, we're
like,
gonna try our best this episode,
yeah,
but
but
uh,
like nobody ever gets it perfect.
going into our next series, we got the Lightning versus the Leafs. This is a matchup we've known about for the last couple of weeks, even months now. A rematch of last year's first round matchup, so this gonna be really exciting to watch. I think the Lightning they just have the experience, like uh, all their guys have been there before, and while the Leafs they don't really have that, like their big stars are unproven in the NHL playoffs and postseason, so that's kind of concerning. Like Matthews was all right in the postseason. Marner's been honestly pretty brutal in the postseason the last couple of seasons. So that's kind of something to be concerned about if you're a Leafs fan. And another thing, if you're a Leafs fan, that's not great is Samsonov isn't really established as a playoff goaltender yet. He had a really good series, or he had a really good season this year, but going up against Vasilevsky and the Lightning, it's you got to think that he's thinking in the back of his head like, if I don't stop every puck tonight, we could probably lose this game. So I just think for all those reasons, I got this going to a game seven still, but I got the Lightning winning it in seven.
yeah, you know, it's. I mean, we talked about the whole playoff format thing, right? A couple episodes ago,
Yeah,
just with like the divisional things. But at the end of the day, Tampa Bay really fell off at the end of the year. So as far as their regular season, it wasn't that great. So like to see these two teams matched up 2 and 3 against each other, it's not that bad. And I just think Tampa's they're getting older and they're getting tired. I
for sure.
I, I think the 3 straight years in the Stanley Cup Final, they're getting tired and they're starting to show signs of regression, if you will. Like since the deadline, they've only won 9 of their 21 games.
Yeah, that's not
They're
great.
9-11-1. It's the worst record of
Yeah,
any playoff team since the deadline. I
really.
think
Well,
they're just getting older. I think the Leafs, they are improving every year, right? Like I think this is the first round is their kind of their Stanley Cup right now. like
yeah,
they
for
haven't they
sure.
haven't won a series in whatever
Yeah,
it is, 17 years.
yeah,
Everybody knows it, and they're just trying to get over that hurdle. And I think that they're going to this year.
yeah.
I really do. I think this is the year, especially a rematch against Tampa. I think I don't know if it would go different ways if Tampa wasn't as tired, but I really do think that's going to play an effect on them. We've seen it on the Penguins, like in 2018, and then after that, you know, I just think playoffs, like hockey's the toughest sport. It really is, and playoff hockey is brutal, and you just get beat up. And when you're not getting breaks in the off season, you're only getting like a month off, and then straight back to an 82 game season, and then 2 more months in the playoffs, 3 straight years
Yeah,
of that,
yeah.
and you know especially since the Lightning haven't been good lately. I think if the Leafs were ever going to win around, it's going to be this year. So I got the Leafs in 6.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
You got the Leafs winning it on Tampa Bay soil, hey?
I do. Yeah,
Wow. Okay, that's
or yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah.
In
But
Tampa.
I think another thing that you gotta think about, I'm not sure if this really applies to any other matchups this in the first round, but I think coaching has a big one, as a big factor in this first round. I feel like John Cooper's a lot better of a coach than Sheldon Keefe. Not knocking on Keefe or anything, but like Cooper's one of the best in the league, and just like he knows everything about the Leafs just from facing them last year, and they've known that they're going to face them in the last couple of weeks and months, right? So like I'm sure they've been preparing for the Leafs in the regular season as well, and like I just feel like that's something that is going to really put the Lightning over the edge. Just like just being able to know your opponent a little bit more, and like as far as like Keith's perspective, I feel like you guys could probably win the first two periods, but it's that third period that I'm not sure if the Leafs have enough to like be able to put the Lightning away. Like I I'm not sure if they can close out playoff games as a team, right? So we saw what they did to Boston in 2013 when they were up and they had that epic collapse in the third period. So I'm not saying anything like that's going to happen again, but they haven't really had the best track record of being able to close out games. Because if I wasn't mistaken, they were up like 3-1 in that Tampa Bay series last year, weren't they?
I don't remember actually, but against Columbus, I know they had a lead and they lost it
Yeah,
in like the bubble a couple years ago.
the Leafs or the
The Leafs did, yeah, they
yeah.
choked the lead versus Columbus in the bubble.
Okay.
But you're right, like they don't have a great track record of holding leads. I think one of the biggest things about this series is experience, and my mind has really changed on experience this past year, mainly because of the Penguins. I mean, I'm a huge Penguins fan. Obviously, I've been talking about them a lot this year, and I just think that if experience was so important, then I think the Penguins wouldn't be losing in the ways that they did this year. Like they probably had some of the most embarrassing late game losses this year. I think they lost upwards of 10 games where they had the lead heading into the third period, and a lot of times in like the last 10 minutes of the game. And like ever since the Rangers, embarrassed the Penguins with all those comebacks in the playoffs last year, it's been the same the whole year, and that's why they didn't make the playoffs because they couldn't hold leads. And the Penguins are the oldest team of all time this year, and I just think that if experience was really that important, I still think it matters to some extent for sure, but if experience was that important, then the oldest team in the league wouldn't be losing in the ways that they did this year. So that's why, I, maybe if I thought differently of that, and then maybe I would have had the Lightning. And
Mhm.
another thing that has kind of changed my mind, because I would have had the Lightning winning this series, you know, in the middle of the season, but obviously the Lightning have really slowed down the stretch, and a big reason as well is Ilya Samsonov. The year that he's had for the Leafs, I think he's answered the questions that the Leafs had in net. So it'll be a matter of he can put it together in the playoffs. But I
Mhm.
think just the fact that I think the Lightning are getting tired. I don't think experience is as important maybe as most people do anymore. And maybe I'm wrong with that, whatever. But and Samsonov kind of answering the Leafs goaltending questions. Those are the three reasons I got the Leafs.
No, like that's fair. That makes sense. I think I still disagree with you. Like I hear what you're saying, but I feel like their record, like from the Lightning's record, I don't think you should read into that too much because, like we've said, they've known that they've been playing the Leafs for the last however long. So like how hard is it to stay motivated? Like if we win this game, we play the Leafs. If we lose the game, we're still playing the Leafs. Like they've been locked in that third Atlantic spot for the last however long. So I feel like that motivation is kind of tough in the regular season, especially from games like 70 to 82, right?
For
So
sure.
I I wouldn't read into that too much if I was a Leafs fan or if I was a Lightning fan. But I also think that the Lightning could just turn it on like no one else. Like maybe the Avalanche are the same, but just like they've just been there too many times where it's like it's so hard to bet against them. And I definitely agree that they are getting tired, but this isn't the fourth round. It's not the third round. Like this is the first round, like right. So uh, I think they still have like gas left in the tank. I don't think they're going to go to the Cup Finals or even the Conference Finals this year, but I definitely have them making it out of the first round because I feel like they just turn it on when they need to.
Yeah, I think the motivation aspect is a good point you bring up. It's such a long year, and like I was saying, the Lightning are tired, and they've proven that. Like last year, I think the Leafs had home ice advantage too against them.
Yep.
They were so I think the Lightning came third in that division as well last year, and they still went to the final. So they've proven that you don't need to win your division to win the cup.
for sure.
So, and I just think, like you said, they probably could have done better down the line. It's just they know that none of this really matters to the playoffs, right? Like they're not worried about breaking records. I think a huge part of that was when they did a few years ago, and then they got swept in the first round, right? So I think they just know that as long as you make it to the playoffs, that's all that matters. So you're right about that. That could be a reason, and maybe we'll see the Lightning almost like a different team than we've seen since the deadline come playoff time, and we all know they're capable of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. And but moving on to our next series, the second last one in the Eastern Conference, we got the Hurricanes versus Islanders. I think this could be really a close series. I can see it going either way. Obviously, the big standout for the Islanders, I should say, is Sorokin, and I think he could be a game changer or even a series changer. But I feel like the depth of the Hurricanes does give them the edge for me. So I have Hurricanes in seven actually. Um, I would also be okay with going Hurricanes in six, but yeah, I think the Islanders just play like this is a good matchup for the Islanders, I think, because they don't really have a lot of like offensive threats, the Hurricanes, and especially with Svechkov going down, I feel like this is kind of like a good matchup for the Islanders, just playing that defensive game. So I'd be okay with seeing the Islanders go through. Like I said, I think it could go either way, but um, yeah, just maybe with home ice advantage, I would have the Hurricanes winning in seven.
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up. As like the Islanders match up well against the Hurricanes. I was just thinking that I was just thinking like with Sveshnikov out, and even when he's here, I don't think he's really an elite offensive talent. And Aho, he's their best player for sure, but he wasn't even a point a game this year. So like, I feel like one of the biggest things with the Hurricanes the last bunch of years is they've never really had that superstar, right?
Yeah,
They've never really had that like go-to guy, like undoubtedly one of the best players in the league. They've had lots of guys in the tier below that, I think, but they've never had that number one guy, and they still don't. And I think that's a huge reason why. Like I don't think that they're going to make it that far into the playoffs, and I don't think they will with this core. Like I think they're going to be a great regular season team and maybe second, third round team for a long time. But I just think they need to, get that one guy to push them there. And like you said, I think the Islanders match up well against them. I think if they were going to beat any team, it would be them because, like you said, two defensive teams. The Islanders play that game of just if they can just kind of keep the game tied going into the third period, that's their game.
yeah,
So that's what the Hurricanes got to worry about. The Hurricanes got to play. They got to get a lead early,
hmm
and with the Islanders' defensive game, they've been pretty good since the deadline. They locked themselves into that number one wild card, and with Sorokin in net, I think if we're going to see an upset, like it's going to be
yeah.
probably the Islanders. And
I agree. Yeah,
I still don't have the Islanders. I have the Hurricanes in six, but like I said, if anybody's going to you know upset a team, I think it could be the Islanders, mainly because of Sorokin and just the fact that the Islanders aren't an elite offensive team.
no, for sure. I 100% agree with everything you said. Um, yeah, like if there was a one seed to get upset, it would 100% be the Hurricanes. You've seen in the past, like they've had really good regular seasons, but they've kind of struggled with closing out series in the playoffs. Like last year, I think it was in the second round, they were up 3-1 against the Rangers, and they ended up losing that series, right? So, like they've kind of had problems with that. Especially if they're going up against one of the best goalies in the league, like they definitely have the advantage between the pipes. Um, it could be tough for the Hurricanes to really like close us out, but yeah, like we both still got the Hurricanes, but yeah, this I think it's pretty easy for us to say that if there was an upset, this would be it. But going into our last series, we got the Rangers versus the Devils, and I think out east, this is probably the most exciting matchup for me. Obviously, the Leafs and Lightning one is gonna be great, but this can be a barn burner. I think it could go either way, and I'm kind of interested to see what kind of style this is going to be. Is it going to be more of like a defensive style, or is it going to be just like a outburst of goals? Because last year, Shesterkin wasn't that great, honestly. Like against the Penguins, he was giving up like 5 goals a game. Honestly, like he was not the Shesterkin that we saw in the regular season. So I'm interested to see if he's the Shesterkin we know, or if he is a goalie that that we saw last year in the playoffs.
He
And
turned it around late though. Remember, in the second and third round, he was unreal.
he did turn around late, especially against the Lightning there. But against an offensive team like the Devils, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that goes. Um, the Rangers' playoff experience is huge for me. They already have like all their roster from last year, as we previously said. They went to the conference finals, and then they also added 2 cup winners in Kane and Tarasenko, right? So they've both been there before. Kane's been there multiple times, and they know what makes Stanley Cup teams, and there's obviously a reason why they both wanted to go to the Rangers, right? So that's definitely something that I think is a factor in the series. And I think kind of on the opposite side, you have the Devils, where it's like they have little to no playoff experience in their lineup. They got Andre Platt, who's been there before, but besides that, they don't really have a lot of experience. But I think that could either be like great for them, or that's going to be the like kind of like the what kills them, I guess you could say, because I could see like a young, exciting team just having all this energy and just like kind of like getting hot and just showing what they can do in the regular season. Or since they're young and they haven't been there before, they could just be kind of going up and down and just like their lows are gonna be really low, and I don't know, like they may not be able to fight too much adversity just because they've never been there before. But yeah, I could really see it going either way. Um, I also got this one going to 7, but I got the Rangers in 7.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Like that was a great breakdown by you, and I think that if any series is going to go all the way to 7 games, it's going to be this one. I think this will be the closest series. I definitely have it going 7, and this was the one that I couldn't make my mind up on between who's going to win. And I think I ended up going with the Rangers in 7. And the reason that I went with the Rangers, and a lot of it has to do with the Penguins and the past. If you look at the Devils this year, I think they were in the top 3 in expected goals percentage, which is like expected goal share. So like, I mean, we talked about it before. It's like shots on goal, but the expected goal has a value to it.
Yep.
Every shot has a value to it, and so the Devils are really good analytically, but that's not everything, right? Like, and I've learned a lot that you can outplay a team in the playoffs and still lose.
For
I've learned a
sure.
lot with that with the Penguins the last couple
Yeah.
series against the
Even the
Rangers and
regular season
Islanders.
too. You see the Pens that would shoot a team by 15
Yeah,
shots, and they still lose.
and like the Flames this year happened a lot to them, right? So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do think the analytics are good in, you know, determining or predicting who's going to outplay a team, but it's hard to say who's going to really win, right? Because goals are what matter. And I think if I had to guess, the Devils are probably going to outplay the Rangers. They'll probably, outshoot them most games, have more expected goals. But I think that the Rangers are going to win. And a huge reason for that, like you said, was the experience as well. Especially adding Tarasenko and Kane, 2 guys who have a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this like probably a month ago on the pod, where I don't think the Devils are just going to get in and make it all the way. We talked about how you need to have that heartbreak. You need to
Yeah.
go through it in years prior. It happened with
Yep.
the Lightning, when they lost to the Blue Jackets, and going back to 2015 against the Lightning, the same core, or against the Blackhawks, the same core lost in the Stanley Cup Final. So I think you have to go through it in order to win first. And the same thing happened with like the Penguins in 2009. They
Yep.
lost the year before against against the Red Wings. Next year they win. So I don't think the Devils are just going to come in and dominate the playoffs like they did the regular season. And I think that the Rangers' experience last year is going to be a huge reason, along with Shesterkin, and why they're going to beat the Devils in 7.
Yeah, I completely agree with you what you said too, and I think another team you think about is the Capitals too. Like it seemed like 3 years in a row they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then eventually they get over the hump and they go to the Cup Final for the first
Yeah,
time in a while, and they get it done, right. So uh,
exactly.
I think you're spot on with your prediction from a couple episodes ago with saying that they're not just gonna walk in and kind of like run through everyone, but This is definitely an exciting time to be a Devils fan. Like with Luke Hughes coming up, and Jack Hughes looks like he's gonna be a superstar type player, and there's a lot of other pieces as well, right? So yeah, it's definitely a exciting and fun time to be a Devils fan.
Yeah, I guess the Luke Hughes question asked last episode kind of got answered, and he had a great first week in the league, 2 points in 2 games, I think, right, and then the overtime winner.
Yeah,
So I'm guessing that he's going to be in the starting lineup in the playoffs. Maybe not though, because the Devils coach did say, Lindy Ruff, he did say that this is a good opportunity to get Hughes in and rest some guys. So
right.
maybe he just did that at the end of the year because they already kind of locked into that second place spot. So we'll see if Hughes starts in the playoffs.
Yeah, I could definitely see him getting at least one game in. Like especially if they're down the series, if they're down 3-1, or like their backs are kind of like against the wall, maybe even like a 3-0. I doubt that would ever happen. But if they were kind of, like just a dead man walking, I could definitely see he was getting in because it's like he's gonna be a part of your franchise hopefully for the rest of his career.
Yeah,
So like you want him to gain that experience early, and especially like I'm sure he's pretty comfortable with the team, but with having Jack there already, right? So that helps a lot. Um, but I think
it's
that's gonna
definitely a good problem to have. I'll
for
say
sure.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, I think that's gonna close it out for our Eastern Conference side of things. We're now going to get into the Western Conference, and our first matchup that we're going to be discussing is the Avalanche versus the Kraken. Um, the Avalanche had a really slow start to the season. I think at one point they were sixth in the Central, and like it was almost too good to be true if you were a Jets fan like me. But now they're just rolling, and they're back to being that team that they can be. McKinnon and Rantanen are both having career years. 50 goals for Rantanen, first 100
50
point season.
55.
55 goals for Rantanen. Jeez, yeah, and um, McKinnon's first 100-point season of his career. He's been so close the last couple of years, and there was one year he got 99 and he played all 82 games. But I think every single year he was on pace to have a 100-point season, but he just didn't play enough games. But
Yeah.
then the only time he wasn't on pace for it was when he played 82 games and had 99 points. So it was only a matter of time for this guy. One thing that the Avalanche will kind of be facing is Landeskog, their captain, is out for the rest of the playoffs, and that's definitely a huge loss for them, not just on the ice but also off the ice. And another thing is that Makar needs to heat up a little bit. He's been kind of underwhelming. I think maybe he maybe had too high of expectations going into this year. Obviously, had the Conn Smythe and the Norris last year, and was probably the second best player on the planet. So I think maybe our expectations were a little bit too high, but I think it was definitely underwhelming about how he did this regular season.
I actually disagree. For the first half of the year, I agree. He kind of slowed down, but then I remember in like our mid-season award predictions and stuff, I was just saying that Makar could turn it around and be on pace for 100 points for the rest of the year, kind of thing. And he kind of did. It wasn't quite that to that extent, but I'm pretty sure he was second in the league in points per game this year. So again, and I think his defensive results were good too. But I mean, one thing to mention about this series is Seattle actually won the season series, like the regular season series. They won 2 of the 3 games, and all 3 games were 1 goal games. So, but that's hard to look into it like that because, like we said, the Avalanche were missing like half their roster and most of their top players early on in the year. And I think a couple of those games were early in the year. And I just think like the Avalanche, I think they could still go all the way this year. Like, we'll see. There's definitely another team in the West we'll get to soon that could also go all the way. But they really turned it around as I expected them to. I know, like when we did our midseason predictions, they were like barely in the playoffs. Like they were barely above 500. They were,
Yeah,
they were, this close to almost falling out of the playoffs, and for it being too much for them to catch up to. But they turned it around as I expected them to, and now they're again still one of the best teams in the West. And Seattle had a really good year. I liked Seattle from the beginning of the year. I think the Bjorkstrand pickup and the Burakovsky signing were really good. I didn't expect Vince Dunn to be this good, but him emerging as a number one defenseman and just their depth scoring at even strength. So many players. They don't have any like point per game guys, but they have a whole bunch like between half a point a game and a point a game. Like they have like 10 guys like that. It's crazy. Like Daniel Sprong was a fourth liner this year. I think he had like 25 goals almost. Like on the fourth line,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like their depth was so good, especially with even strength scoring, but they don't have any stars, right?
Mhm.
And their goaltending is still questionable. So I think the Avalanche for sure have the advantage in the series. I got the Avalanche in five.
Yeah, I got the Avalanche sweeping. Yeah, 4 or 5. I don't think it really matters too much, but I think maybe one thing for people and that makes McCarthy's season maybe a little bit underwhelming was that he only played 60 games this year. So he missed 22 games and like almost like a quarter of the season, right? So
Yeah,
that's definitely could be a factor. But speaking of injuries as well, Burakovsky is out for the series from the Kraken, right? So definitely not a game changer or anything, but a really good player and a good depth piece for sure for the Kraken.
yeah. And another thing I should mention is like this is like the ultimate experience versus no experience, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
the first ever playoff berth for the Kraken, and the Avalanche just won the cup.
yeah.
So I think it's just probably the biggest favorites of any series is the Avalanche for this series, and if there's going to be a sweep, I think it'll be this one.
All right, so now moving into our next series, we got the Wild versus Stars. This is gonna be another really exciting series. I think it's gonna be very heavy. I think the teams kind of play a certain style that is similar, but I think the Stars have just a little bit more depth, and I think they have more talent on the back end with Heiskanen. But if you remember the Flames versus the Stars series last year, the Stars didn't come out on top, but definitely a positive from that series was Jake Ottinger, and we've seen the playoff goal that he can be, and I don't think that's something that's going to go away or anything like that. So, yeah, he's going to be a series changer for them. I think he could probably be as valuable in this series as Sorokin is in the Islanders Hurricane series. I'm not saying Ottinger's better than him, but just as purely as a team value standpoint, I think he could be as valuable. So yeah, I do got the Stars in 6 games. Um, Jason Robertson's having a really good year too. Pavelski's having a really good year. Just recently reached 1,000 career points, so congrats to him. But also a trade deadline acquisition in Max Domi was also really good for the team's depth. So yeah, just for all those reasons, I I got the Stars in 6 games.
Yeah, I have the exact same thing. Stars and six. I think it's going to be probably like my favorite series. I'm a fan of both these teams for whatever reason. I like these teams in Colorado. Uh, I don't know why they just happen to be all Central teams, but
Just like rooting against the Jets.
whatever. Anyways, uh, I think the main storyline in this series is Kaprizov versus Robertson,
Yeah,
and they've kind of at least between like Stars and Wild fans, they've kind of been pitted against each other ever since their rookie year when they were like 1-2 in Calder voting, right? So ever since then, it's kind of just been like who's better, and it's kind of changed over the years, right? Like started with Kaprizov, and then Robertson caught up, and then
yeah,
Kaprizov again, and now it's like with Robertson the year he had,
yeah.
and Kaprizov's still so good. Like they're both, for sure, probably top five left wingers, right?
Hmm.
And both of these teams are really good defensive teams as well. So I think it's going to be a great series. And I do have the Stars in six. And again, we talked about the experience. The Stars do have that experience. They made the Stanley Cup Final. A lot of people forget they made the Stanley Cup Final a few years ago in the bubble against the Lightning.
Yeah.
And I think Ottinger will be a huge difference as well. He proved that he's a number one goalie, starting with the postseason last year, and then he just carried that momentum to this year, and he had an unreal year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think kind of got all the same reasons there. But going into our second to last first round matchup, we got the Winnipeg Jets against the Vegas Golden Knights. I want to hand this one off to you. I want to know what you have to say. What do you think about this series?
I think it's going to be a lot closer than most people think. Like at first glimpse, I feel like when you're looking at the standings at the end of the year, isn't it the 2 versus 7 seeds?
Yeah, they're yeah. No, I think it's 1 versus 8 actually. We got the last
Oh, you're
wild card
right. It
spot.
is.
Yeah.
right. So yeah, it's 1 versus 8. So just looking at that and the fact that I think Vegas swept the season series, I believe. I think it was 3-0.
It was 3-0, but one of those was overtime win.
Okay,
Yeah.
but still, Vegas won all three. That's all that matters in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
You know, whoever wins in overtime, it's the same as a normal win in the playoffs. So looking at that, you would think, okay, maybe like honestly, maybe a sweep for Vegas, but I'm not going that way. I'm not going the way that you probably will. I don't have the Jets. I don't have the Jets upsetting, but I think it's going to go 7, and it's going to be really close. I think of all the wild card teams, I think the Jets have the best chance of upsetting, and a lot of that has to do with Connor Hellebuck,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of it also is going to have to do with if they play Nikolai Ehlers. This guy, he's one of the leaders in the entire league in points per 60 minutes, and Rick Bowness just won't give him more ice time. I think he has the exact same point per game rate this year as Mark Scheifele. He's playing like 5 less minutes per game. So like I don't know what they're doing. They're like burying him in the third line. He's only getting like 15 minutes a night. They got to give him more ice time. He's such a good player. He's one of the fastest players in the league if you watch him.
For sure.
He's
Yeah.
one of my favorite players to watch actually because of that. I just think he deserves more ice time. He's really an elite winger in this league. I think,
Yeah.
and I don't know
No, you're
why
a great Mr.
Bonus.
Player.
Yeah, I don't know why Bonus isn't playing him more. But yeah, just to get back to Hellebuck as well, he's capable of stealing a series, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that on paper, as far as forwards and defensemen go, Vegas definitely has you know their number, but in net, it's a pretty big question for Vegas. I know that Jonathan Quick has been playing well,
Hmm.
but we'll see. I mean, he's getting older, and he had a really bad regular season this year, at least before he got to Vegas. So, like, are we going to see the Vegas Quick, where he's been really good since the deadline, or are we going to see the Los Angeles Quick from the first, you know, 3 quarters of the year where he had like an 870 save percentage?
Yeah.
I think that's the goaltending in the series is going to determine who wins.
Yeah. I think that's a really good breakdown. You said Vegas in 7, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I could definitely see it going that way. Um, I think this could obviously have the potential to be a really good first round matchup. Um, from what I see on both teams, they both have really good forward depth, and they play a similar heavy style. Um, like you said, you kind of checked all the boxes with Hellebuck and the goaltending matchup, so that's definitely something that I you got to take into account. And yeah, in Vegas having that kind of the 1A 1B goaltenders with Brossoit and Quick definitely is a question mark. I'm very optimistic about the Jets, to probably no one's surprise. But like their inconsistency still remains an issue to me, and I think a problem for them was like they their work ethic in the regular season. So that's something that's kind of like scary for me, right? It's like are they out of gas, or are they tired? But I'm confident that they can turn it around in playoffs. Um, I also got this one going to 7. I and I don't know. I could really see it going either way. Um, Golden Knights have the home ice advantage, so maybe you kind of gave them the advantage there. But they also got their goaltending. Game 7 is also kind of a question mark, and like I think the Jets definitely have the Game 7 goaltending advantage right there. So I think I'm gonna go Jets in 7. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Golden Knights honestly in 7, or maybe even Golden Knights in 6. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it was that. But I uh, I think my predictions are just based off what I know the Jets can play like, and how I hope they can play, whether that's true or not. But yeah, I got Jets in 7, and this is gonna be a really good series, I think.
I just, I mean, I know that it's going to be a close series, but I just can't believe you haven't learned. You haven't
Learn what?
learn from your past mistakes. Come
What
on,
mistakes?
in the midseason, you chose the Jets for the cup, and then they went on the worst run ever, going from the
Yeah.
first in the Western Conference to barely in the playoffs. And then the Morrissey
How am
pick
I
as
supposed to
well
know
for
that?
Norris.
How
What
am
are
I
we
supposed to
doing with
know that
that?
though?
What are we doing with the Morrissey pick? We got to expose
Okay,
this guy
okay,
for his homerism.
okay. I need to back myself up because when I made the Winnipeg Jets Stanley Cup, my 2023 Stanley Cup like when I said that, they were first in the Western Conference by quite a bit, like 4 points at the time, right? Like they had by far the most the point percentage, the best point percentage in the West. So that's not a hot take right there. Like that's not something that I should be put on blast for. And secondly, when I made the Morrissey pick, he was by far the runner up for the Norris, right? It was Eric Carlson and then Morrissey and then maybe like Fox, McAvoy, Makar, kind of in
I
that
think
third spot. Maybe Dahlin
Darlene was
in
ahead
the
of him.
third spot.
Darlene was second,
Yeah.
I think, at that point.
Well, at that point, I don't know, but he was definitely
He
a
was in the
finalist.
conversation. Yeah,
He
he
was definitely a
was.
finalist, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's either a hot take at the time. If a guy is a finalist, like he's there for a reason, right? So I don't think that's a hot take. I stand by everything what I said because although I don't think that's going to still happen with Morrissey winning it, at the time, I have no regrets saying that, right? So um, definitely not a great look, and maybe I kind of jinxed them a little bit, both the team and Morrissey, but uh, at the time, I still stand by that. And if the same thing happens next year, when if they're first in the West in January or something, I'll say it again.
Well, I do respect that. I have to say, I respect that you still stand by it for sure. So, and like I said, this series, like I said, like if any wildcard team, I think the Jets have the biggest chance. And like I said, a lot of that has to do with Hellebuck. So we'll see. I think it will be a good series. I'll definitely be watching, and we'll see. I think the Golden Knights. I think they're going to win. Like I said, still in seven, but I think it'll be closer than most people think.
All right, so now moving on to our last series of the first round, we got the Kings versus the Oilers. The Oilers have arguably been the best team since the trade deadline. They're like 17-2-1 or something just ridiculous since the trade deadline. So like that Ekholm deal was definitely a W trade for them. McDavid's still having a career year, and I think he's going to continue to carry this team. And I think the last thing about the Oilers that is important to say is that Stuart Skinner has established himself as a really good regular season goalie. So hopefully that kind of continues going into the playoffs because we haven't seen him in the playoffs just yet. So hopefully that continues. But um, the Kings are actually they're a good matchup for the Oilers because they play that defensive, strong up the middle game with Danault and Kopitar. So that's definitely something to watch out for if you're an Oilers fan. But um, I think just McDavid and Draisaitl, they're just too good, and like I don't really think it matters who you put on them, how many guys are on them. They're still gonna find a way to get it done. So for that reason, I got Oilers in five. Um, I don't see them losing at home, to be honest. So uh, if they would take two at home, I could see them taking one on the road, and then they're up 3-1 going back home. And I just don't see McDavid allowing him or his team to lose on home ice, especially in the first round. So yeah, just for those reasons, I got Oilers in five.
Yeah, and about the home ice, I have a stat here. They have the best home ice record since the deadline. They only have 8 games, so it's a small sample, but they're 7-0-1. So they haven't lost in regulation since the deadline, since they really improved their team. And that Matthias Ekholm trade was huge. He has been probably the best acquisition of any player so far, and I don't think anybody would have predicted that. I think
Yeah,
he's still a really good player, but he's just aging, and he didn't have the best year with Nashville, like in the first half, but he has been unreal. I mean, he's putting up points. He's been great defensively, blocking shots, killing penalties, everything. He's been such a good acquisition for them, and that's exactly what they needed. He's exactly what they needed. Like I
yeah,
think I talked about it a lot with the Oilers and just their defensive struggles. They don't have a great defensive team, or at least they didn't like a few months ago. I think Nurse isn't that great defensively. Bouchard is really poor defensively, but
Barry
Ekholm
at the
is,
time.
yeah, Barry at the time exactly. All you got three guys right there who are,
Yeah, half your decor is not good
yeah,
defensively, right?
and
So
I think that's a huge reason why they lost to Colorado. I talked about it, a while ago. You can't outscore. You can't just score and win the cup. You can't be
mhm,
all offense, and they got exposed versus the Avalanche for that last year when they got swept. They ran through the first couple series, especially Calgary offensively, where they
yeah,
just blew up and had 6 goals every game.
yeah,
But you just can't maintain that in the playoffs. So that's why I was just preaching that they need to get better defensively. I was saying, like, I think when we talked about like the trade deadline preview, I was saying like why would you trade for Carlson when you
Yeah,
need defense?
for sure. Yeah,
So I honestly think that trading for Ekholm is the best thing they could have done then.
yeah,
And they also called up this Vincent Darnay from the AHL. He's a huge guy. He's like 6'6" or something. He's just a pure defensive defenseman, but he's been really solid for them as well. So they've got better in the areas that they needed to get better, and they've been the best team since the deadline. And for that reason, like I got the Oilers in 6. And beforehand, looking at the series, I was gonna go with the Kings, like right around the time of the deadline, because you kind of could tell with the standings that this was probably going to be the matchup,
yeah,
the second and third teams in the Pacific, and just a rematch from last year. And that series went 7 games. And since then, I think LA's gotten a lot better. Doughty was out then. They acquired Kevin Fiala.
yeah.
So I think looking at that, I probably would have taken LA because they got better from a series that went 7 last year. But then Edmonton has just been on this crazy tear. They got exactly what they needed at the deadline. And for that reason, I think they're going to go on a run in this playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. It's obviously easy to say now that the Ekholm trade was the best thing, and I don't think any of us really knew that at the time. But yeah, definitely a great trade for them, and that's our last first round series matchup that we're gonna be talking about. So now it's time to get into some other stuff and talk about some hypothetical situations or even some predictions, I guess you could say. So we're gonna go back to the Eastern Conference. Um, for our Eastern Conference final, for myself, I have the Bruins versus the Rangers, and I have them winning in 6. We kind of already talked about each team that we're going to talk about further, so I'm not going to go too in depth about what makes this team good or what makes the other team, a good matchup for the other team. But yeah, my Eastern Conference, I got Bruins, Rangers in 6, and Bruins winning, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah, I also have the Bruins making the holy crap, Eastern Conference Final. I can't talk, but I did predict that back in whatever it was, like January, I think, when we did the predictions for playoffs and everything. I had Boston winning the cup, and I think they're still like right there. I mean, they've only gotten better since then, so I do have Boston going to the conference final. And for the next team, it was tough. It's kind of hard to predict this because you don't know how things are going to reseed. Because one series change could just change who they're gonna be playing against in the next round, right? With reseeding and everything, it's not like the normal bracket, right? I'm correct about that, right?
No, no, they like it. There's got to be one team from the Central, one team from the Pacific. Like there's only the only way that like 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 the Bruins will face the winner of the Tampa Bay Toronto series no matter what next.
Okay, my bad. So
They
it's
don't
it's
reseed.
it's
Yeah,
it's just like a bracket.
it's just straight bracket. Yeah.
Okay, my bad. But yeah, I mean, I have the Rangers as well, and a lot of that has to do with experience as well, and just because Shesterkin and net is so good. So I think that's going to be a really good series in the third round, Boston, New York. But I have Boston as well. It kind of sucks that we have the same
Yeah.
predictions, but I mean the Bruins are so good that I think they're going to cruise to the Stanley Cup final.
How many games you got the Eastern Conference Final in?
I got 6.
Yeah. So both got Bruins versus Rangers in 6. But moving on to the Western Conference now. Uh, for my Western Conference final, I got the Oilers versus the Avalanche. Kind of a rematch from last year, but um, this time I got the Oilers on top. I got Oilers in 7 over the Avalanche in the conference final.
Wow. Okay. I think it's going to be close. I have the same thing as well. I feel like that one's most people are going to go with that. Edmonton and Colorado, the Stanley Cup winner and probably the best team in the Western Conference
Yeah,
in the last half of the year. Like they've been on this unreal tear. They're like 16-2-1. I think I mentioned since
yeah,
the deadline. It's crazy, and I agree. It sucks we have the same thing, but
really, yeah,
yeah, I think a huge part of that is Landeskog being out
yeah,
and just the Oilers getting better. I think that you look at last year and Colorado's gotten worse. I think. I mean, they're without Landeskog. They lost Kadri. They lost Kemper.
yeah,
So
for sure.
3 big parts of their team. I mean, Georgiev has probably been as good as Kemper, so you could take him out of the equation. But I think losing Kadri has hurt them this year a lot more than they could have predicted. Just that second line center, and he actually was a huge reason their power play was so good last year. I
Yeah,
think he like led their team in power play points last year. So losing him is tough, and they definitely have gotten worse since then because of that, and especially with Landeskog out, that's two huge holes in the lineup
yeah,
from last playoffs. And with the Oilers, they've only gotten better, right? And
yeah,
McDavid has proved like he is the best player maybe ever at this point. Like
yeah.
probably the most
Honestly,
like
honestly,
he. I mean, he's the most talented player ever. Like I
yeah,
mean, I know
by far the most
you can't
talented
compare
player.
eras. Like
Yeah,
as far as greatness goes, Gretzky has way more on his resume for championship success and everything. So they're not in the same league as far as that goes. But talent wise, McDavid. I mean, again, with the eras you can't compare, but McDavid is the most talented player we've ever seen. Nobody's been
yeah,
faster with him with the puck than him. Nobody's been more skilled. He's the best skater ever. He really
yeah,
is. And
100%.
and
Yeah,
he, I learned my lesson when betting against him. You know, when we did like the predictions again, and you said that he was going to win the Rocket. You know, have the most assists as well and most points,
yeah,
and win everything. The Art
yeah,
Ross, everything.
and reach 150 too.
Yeah, and reach 150. You got all those right. You checked off all the boxes, and I I bet against him. I bet for Pasta to win the Rocket, and I also a huge reason for that was because I also had the Oilers out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
I
wow.
had when this was back in January when they were literally like barely above 500. They were really struggling, and I was just thinking like, man, McDavid just had like the best half season ever.
Yeah,
You know, you can't expect him to do that again. And for that reason, that's why I didn't have the Oilers in the playoffs because they weren't even in the playoffs at the time, and I just didn't think they would have a better second half than first half, which I've been
they
hilariously
figured it out
wrong
though.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a tough take by me looking back, but I mean, McDavid proved me wrong. He had as good of a second half as the first half, if not better.
yeah, yeah.
So he proved he can maintain that for a full year, and he's going to do it all the way into the playoffs. He's going to break records this year. He's going to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Final. He's going to have the most points, in this century in a playoff run. And
Wow.
yeah, the Oilers are
Well,
going to
I
go
mean,
all the way to Stanley Cup
he led the league
Stanley Cup
in
Final,
playoff
I should say.
he led the league in playoff points last year, and he got knocked out in the conference finals. Like Draisaitl and
He's
him
unreal.
were the top two in playoff points, and then even played in the cup
Yeah,
final. Like, it's crazy. Well, imagine if they get another series under the belt, right? So,
yeah,
yeah. So, uh, how many games did you have the Oilers winning in?
7 as well.
7. Okay.
That's going to
Yeah.
be
So,
such a fun series if
yeah,
that happens. I
that's
hope it does.
yeah. That's crazy that we had the same teams in each conference final and in the same amount of games. That's
Yeah.
crazy. But going on to our hypothetical Stanley Cup final. I hope it's not hypothetical. I mean, this would be a lot of fun. Hopefully, the Jets are there instead. But um, Bruins Oilers. This would just be crazy. Like I think there'd be a lot of goals, um, but I just can't see anyone beating this Bruins team. Like if there's anyone that can do it, it's gonna be McDavid and Draisaitl. But I just don't think I don't think there's enough in the league to beat the Bruins and who they got just on all facets of the game and whether it's forwards or defense or goaltending and like we said their depth is just crazy that like they might not even be gassed going into the cup final, like most teams are like just going off of pure excitement of being in the Stanley Cup final and their bodies aren't doing good or anything like that, but I think these guys have the potential of their depth and having rest. Like if they can have a 4 game series or 5 game series, they're gonna have rest and their depth is they might be fresh going into the Stanley Cup final, which is crazy to say, but yeah, I think I got Bruins in 6 over the Oilers in the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, I want to see a Canadian team win the cup more than anything, and just as much as anyone else. But I just feel like the Bruins are just way too good, and I don't think I've ever seen a team like the Bruins in my life. So it's really hard to go against them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the same way you're going. I've had the Bruins all year. I've been riding with them, ever since we started this podcast. And
Well,
I
it's pretty
got
easy to say that because they're the best team ever. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
But I mean, I had them, I had them back in January.
Yeah, it's
But
not a hot take, you know?
for sure, for sure, I'm
Yeah.
not claiming it to be, but I'm still sticking with them. And
Yeah. No, it's
I
fair.
mean, really, like they might be the best team ever. Like really, like at least in the regular season, they were statistically,
Yeah.
and they don't have any weaknesses at all. Like I've never seen a team just with no weaknesses. Like their defense is so good. Their penalty kill I think, was the best in the league. I think their forwards are scoring like they're finishing like they had like
Yeah.
an unbelievable finishing rate, scoring way above expected.
Yeah. They had like
Like
5 or 6 20-goal
yeah,
scorers.
like everybody on their team is scoring above expected, like scoring more
Yeah.
goals than they probably should have, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that might be a bit of luck too, but and net. I even forgot to mention Allmark. He's going to win the Vezina.
Yeah.
He probably should. So like everything, just there's no weaknesses, and I'm going to go with the Bruins in 7. And again, a reason for that as well is the Oilers goaltending. Stuart Skinner had a great year for sure. I think he deserves a lot of attention for the Calder.
Yeah.
I think he's right there with Beniers. Honestly,
Yeah.
he could
Yeah, I
win
agree.
it, but I just think he's a rookie goalie. When's the last time we've seen a rookie goalie take their team to the cup? I guess I just
I
thought of
mean, Matt Murray
Binnington. Well,
and Bennington.
yeah, I guess. So I guess that wasn't
I
a great.
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe it
maybe
will
we
happen.
should. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's funny that we didn't even think of that.
yeah,
It
I
just
didn't even think about that either.
yeah. So I guess maybe that's not a great reference, but in fact, it's not a good one at all. But I'm still gonna go with it. I guess. I mean, I can't change my mind now,
Yeah, no, no, that's fair, yeah.
and I wouldn't change my mind. But yeah,
Yeah, so, yeah, hopefully we get to see that series 'cause, at the end of the day, you wanna see the best team against the best players, right? And that's exactly what this would be, so, um, yeah, this was a really fun episode just talking about, all the series. It got me even more excited, about the playoffs, and, I don't think that could happen, but, yeah, I'm super excited for the games tonight and, just to get the playoffs underway and, uh just I'm ready to see McDavid do his thing and yeah, because it's really historical what we're seeing. Like it's like I don't want anyone to take it for granted how amazing McDavid is. And like we haven't seen a guy like this ever, right? As far as a pure talent perspective. So just with every game, every playoff series, every playoff run, just like I'm gonna watch every single McDavid game. Like I've told buddies of mine that like you just see every opportunity that you have to watch McDavid and the Oilers, like what, like take it, like take that opportunity because it sounds crazy. Like I'm maybe not overhyping them, but I'm just like kind of just like
you
praising them so much.
you
But
can't overhype McDavid.
yeah, exactly. It's like every opportunity that you got to watch him because he's not going to be playing forever, and he's truly just like a generational type talent, maybe in like a century type talent, right? So, if that's even a thing, but yeah, I'm super excited for the playoffs this year.
Yeah, could you imagine if he leads the regular season and the playoffs in goals, assists, and points?
Yeah,
That would be one of the best years ever.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
maybe the best. I don't know if that's ever happened before.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if he can do that and then win the cup, like
like
it's it'd be
imagine
pretty
that. Like
crazy.
he's never really had that much success in his career. I mean, at least team wise, I should say.
Yeah,
Imagine if he just wins like the Art Ross, the Maurice Richard,
yeah,
the Ted Lindsay, the Conn
Conn
Smythe,
Smythe.
and the Stanley
Yeah,
Cup. Like,
yeah. What else would you want from him?
yeah, literally. So I kind of hope that happens almost, but I just can't see it happening. The Bruins are just too good. They're
Yeah.
literally a flawless team.
Who do you got as your Conn Smythe winner?
Haven't even thought of this really that much, but with the Bruins winning, my pick back in January was Bergeron, I believe. I know that he's been dealing with a little bit of injury stuff. I don't even know if he's going to be ready for Game 1 of the playoffs. So it's hard to say. I think he's not having a as good of a year as normal this year. Obviously, he's aging, so I might change my pick on that and go with a guy in with 60 goals this year in Pasternak.
Yeah,
Hard to bet
no,
against him.
that's what I'd go with too. Is if the Bruins do win in six, like I said, I would go with Pasternak for sure.
Yeah,
But I think that's gonna close out for this week's episode. Yeah, that was awesome. Like we said, can't wait for the playoffs. And the last thing we want to talk about is we're gonna start going to 2 episodes a week during the playoffs. So we're gonna have one on Mondays and one on Thursdays. So just to try to stay on top of everything. And you guys know how quick series can change, right? So, uh, like game one, they could be rolling, and game two, it could be a complete disaster for one team. So, we just want to stay on top of it, and I think going to 2 episodes a week will help it.
Yeah, and we're gonna be posting a complete bracket on our Instagram at elbows.up.podcast. I shout this out every episode, so if you haven't, followed them on Instagram, make sure to give us a follow. Yeah, like I said, we'll be posting our entire bracket. So, you know, round one, two, three, four, with all the games and everything. We'll be posting that. I think, I guess today, later today, just as the playoffs are starting, and can't change it then once it's posted. So it'll be interesting to see who has a better bracket, or if anybody gets it right.
Yeah, yeah. We were both really close for the World Juniors this year. We were both only one game off. Where I think I got the bronze medal game wrong, and I said Sweden was going to beat USA, and USA won. And then I think you got the final wrong with saying Czechia was going to beat Canada, but you got the bronze medal game right. So
Right?
hopefully we
Yeah.
can keep that track record of having pretty accurate brackets.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have went with like Boston, Edmonton, so it's not
Yeah,
like really a hot take for this, but we'll see. I think it's going to be such a fun playoffs. Like I said, it's the best time of year for hockey fans. Along with the World Juniors, I would say,
yeah,
and I just can't wait for it to get started.
yeah, yeah. It's going to be an awesome couple of weeks of hockey here. So I think with that all being said, thanks for listening and have a good one.